Hi everyone. Uh, Hi everyone. Thanks for joining our seminar today. Ashish, can you please mute yourself? Yeah, thanks a lot. So thank you everyone for joining us. The topic for the webinar is the implication of this COVID-19 on the direct tax angle. And today Priyanka Goenka, who is an ex-E&Y and is the partner with GST Expertise and the Kretam Advisory as well. She is going to update you from the impact of COVID-19 from the direct tax angle. Let's hear it from the Priyanka that what are all those challenges. Priyanka, over to you.
Thank you, Devin, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is keeping safe at home. So today's agenda is to discuss the direct tax relaxations that have been introduced by the government during this to tackle this COVID-19, and also to discuss some of the business ramifications that COVID-19 would have on businesses or on individuals in terms of determining the tax residencies. And so tax residency also we will be discussing some transfer pricing considerations which will be arising out of COVID-19, how businesses can improve their cash flows, certain structures around intra-group funding considerations, and a few items of income and expenses which may trigger because of COVID-19. So, direct tax relaxations. So, in view of this outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic across the world, government felt that it was imperative to give certain relaxations, to relax certain provisions in direct tax and other laws. Since the parliament was not in session, the president promulgated the ordinance necessitating immediate action. If you see the ordinance broadly, the ordinance provides extension of time limits of certain compliances which fall between 20th of March 2020 to 29th of June 2020. So we will be taking up these extensions one by one. The first one is the extension of the filing of belated and revised return for financial year 18-19. The due date for filing such returns is typically 31st of March, which has now been extended to 30th of June. The second extension is linking of PAN with Aadhaar. Like you would know, the law was that the PAN had to be linked with Aadhaar till 31st of March. In case the PAN was not linked with Aadhaar, the PAN would have become inoperative. But hello. Yeah, sorry. So, yeah, we were discussing the second point, which was the linking of PAN with Aadhaar. So, this has been extended till 30th of June. So, the PAN, which was becoming inoperative because of non-linking with Aadhaar, will now be extended till 30th of June. The third bullet talks about investments by individuals to claim 80 deductions, which is your investments in PPF, NSC, etc. So the deadline is 31st of March, which has again been shifted to 30th of June. This is a breather for some of the individuals who would have not been able to meet the internal deadlines of submitting proofs, which are typically set up by companies. So they have time limit up till 30th of June to undertake these investments. Also, CBDT has started making necessary changes in the return form so as to facilitate individuals so that they can take full benefit of these investments which are made during the extended period. So the CBDT is revising forms and they will be coming up with revised forms very soon. The last bullet here on this particular slide talks about investments which are made under a capital gain scenario in order to uh, reduce the capital gain taxation. So there are section 54 exemptions wherein if an individual has a capital gain and if those gains are invested in certain properties or they are invested in certain bonds, the capital gain is exempt from tax. So there the deadline has also again been extended to 30th of June 2020. So coming on to the assessment side, so the due date for issuance of notices, intimations, notifications, order, sanction order, filing of appeal, furnishing of returns, etc. has also been extended. So here, if we talk of certain examples, a classic example of issuance of notice would be in case of a reassessment where the due date for issuing a reassessment notice for assessment year 15-16 was 30th of March. Now this gets extended to 30th of June. Again, for furnishing of returns, so your TDS returns which were due between this period also gets extended. Statements, your TDS statement, Form 16 is also extended. One thing that is not covered though is the individual return filing date. As we all know, it clearly does not fall within this 20th March to 20th. The due date is not 31st of March, and it is therefore has not been included in this and has been kept separate. The next topic here is Vivad Se Vishwas. So, like we all know, there was in this year's budget, a new scheme was introduced by the government, Vivad Se Vishwas, wherein they wanted to curtail the income tax assessments. One of the conditions which was specified under this scheme was that if the assessee opts for the scheme and makes payment by 31st of March, the amount of payment will be restricted to 100% of the disputed tax only. Whereas where the payment was made after 31st of March, a 10% interest was also levied. So given the COVID pandemic, this 31st March 2020 deadline has been extended and the 10%, additional 10% amount which was payable is not payable till the time the assessee opts for the scheme and makes the payment under the scheme by 30th of June 2020. So if a assessee makes payment of taxes by 30th of June 2020, whatever is required to be paid is just 100% of the disputed tax and not 110%. The last bullet, it talks about FCZ units. So Section 10 AA of the Income Tax Act talks about tax holiday to a unit which is set up in a special economic zone. The condition for claiming this tax holiday is twofold. First, a new unit should be set up in that SCZ by 31st of March 2020, and such unit should begin activity of manufacture or production of article or thing by 31st of March 2020. So a relaxation has been brought in under this section whereby a unit which is established in SCZ area by 31st of March 2020 but has not commenced production or manufacturing or providing of services by 31st of March 2020 can start the activity of manufacturing or providing of services by 31st of June. In that case, the SCZ unit will be eligible for a 10 AA tax holiday, provided the approval from SCZ authorities has been issued before March 31st, 2020. So, in short, any SCZ unit which was newly established by 31st of March 2020, even when the unit has not begun any manufacturing activity, has not provided any services as on 31st of March 2020, can avail this tax holiday provided A, the SCZ authorities have issued a approval letter before 31st of March 2020 and the unit start commences the activity or provides the service before 30th of June 2020. So the third relaxation that was introduced was with respect to interest rates. Like we all know, delay in deposit of advance tax, self-assessment tax, TCS, equalization levy, STT, CTT. This also, wherever there is a delay in deposition of these taxes, it attracts the interest at the rate of 1%. And in case of TDS, 1.5% per month. The relaxation that has been brought in by the government is that instead of 1% and 1.5%, a 0.7% interest will be levied per month for all the delayed payments which are made during 20th of March 2020 to 30th of June 2020. So, two things which are worth noting here is that there is no change in timeline for the payment of tax. So, the due date remains the same. If the assessee does not make the payment of tax by the due date, there, in that case, the assessee can deposit the tax with delay, but the interest that will be levied will not be 1% or 1.5% as the case may be. It will be 0.75% per month. The second point that needs to be noted here is that the 0.75% per month interest levy is only applicable where the delay is paid on or before of 30th June 2020. So the assessee can choose not to pay the advance tax on due date, but in order to avail the 0.75% interest rate, the assessee has to pay the tax maximum by 30th of June. If the assessee pays beyond 30th of June, the earlier provisions would be applicable. No penalty or prosecution shall be levied or initiated for the delay. So where the tax is deposited with interest, no penalty or prosecution shall be initiated for it. Tax exemption to donations made to PM CARES Fund. Like we know, the government has come up with a PM CARES Fund where individuals, companies can contribute, and the contributions will be used to fight COVID-19 pandemic. So, in order to give benefit of contributions to individuals, this has been recognized as a allowable deduction under ATG. 100% of deductions which are made to this PM CARES Fund will be allowed as deduction. Cap of 10% would not be applicable. Where the employees are contributing, are making contributions to this fund through their employer, the deduction will only be allowed where the donation details are captured in the Form 16 issued by the employer. So it is important that where these contributions are made through the employer, the donation details are mentioned in Form 16 of the individual. Another point worth noting is that all the donations which are made till 30th June will qualify for tax deduction. Lastly, even a domestic company claiming concessional rate of tax, which is your 22% and 15%, which was introduced last year. One of the conditions for claiming such concessional tax rate was that there will be no deductions or exemptions allowed to the company. But exclusion has been given that even for such companies where they are making contribution to this fund, a deduction will be allowed for the financial year 1920, and these companies will continue to be eligible for claiming these concessional tax rates in the tax year 2021. Extension of nil or lower TDS or TDS certificates to 30th of June 2020. This was another relief that was provided by the government. A lot of companies have been obtaining a lower or a nil TDS certificate, and these certificates are typically obtained at the beginning of a financial year. Given the departments are not working, the extension that has been brought about by the government is twofold. One, with respect to certificates for 2020, for financial year 2021, which have been applied. So there are multiple cases have been jotted down. The first case is where the taxpayer has applied for a lower withholding certificate for financial year 2021, and the same is pending with the department for disposal. In such cases, if the assessee or the taxpayer has a previous certificate for financial year 1920, the same will be applicable up till 30th of June. So, this particular case covers where taxpayer has already applied for a fresh certificate, but the same is pending with the department. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, Priyanka, you are audible.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The second case covers taxpayers where the taxpayers could not apply for a new withholding certificate for financial year 2021, but they have an earlier certificate for financial year 1920. In that case, the taxpayers can continue with the earlier certificate for financial year 1920 up to 30th of June. However, they need to apply for a fresh certificate as soon as possible. One thing that needs to be noted here while applying for a fresh certificate for 2021 is that the procedure for applying for a lower withholding certificate has changed. Earlier, one had to go on to the portal and apply for a certificate, but now government has come up with guidelines where all the relevant documents along with forms need to be mailed to the concerned TDS officer. So people who are looking to obtain fresh certificates for financial year 2020 can send relevant documents along with form to the jurisdictional TDS officer for obtaining a withholding certificate. The third bullet talks about cases where the third bullet actually talks about the fact that when one is applying for financial year 2021 certificate, even when the earlier certificate was applicable, when you apply for a new certificate, the entire period, which is starting from April 2020 till 31st of March 2021, will be considered. Even when there has been extension of the earlier certificate by 3 months, the 3 month period will be covered while deciding on the TDS rate for financial year 2021. Last bullet.
एग्जांपल से समझा सकते हो प्रियंका ये वाले सिनेरियोज ना एक बार एग्जांपल
Okay, so okay, fine. So I like explain you with an example. So if I am a company and I have a say 5% withholding certificate for 1920, I had applied for a lower withholding certificate for 2021, but that certificate has not yet been issued to me. So in that particular case, because I do not have a fresh certificate for the financial year 2020, what government has said is that the earlier certificate which was issued to the company can be relied upon for a period of 3 months, which is up till 30th of June 2020. Now coming to the second point, where the taxpayer hasn't applied for a fresh certificate. Even in those cases, the taxpayer can rely on the earlier certificate for 3 months period, but needs to apply for a fresh certificate immediately. Now the question would come in, how does the taxpayer apply when the department is not working? So, as per the modified procedure, what the government has said is that one can apply for a lower withholding certificate by sending all the relevant data, which is your form, which is your projections, by way of an email to the concerned jurisdiction officer. Now, explaining the third point in the context of the example, where a company has already relied on the earlier certificate for payments which have been received up till June and is waiting for a fresh certificate. Even in those cases, that 3 month period where say you were deducting a 5% rate which was based on financial year 1920, and now the new rate which has come up is for 2020 is say 6% or a 4%. Even for those 3 months period where a 5% rate was applied, it will be considered while considering that 4 or 6% rate. Moving to the fourth bullet, which typically talks about a TDS rate in case of payments to a non-resident. So, by way of an example, if I am a taxpayer and I am making a payment to a foreign company or to a branch of a foreign company, which is nothing but a P in India, typically what happens is that these P's apply for a lower withholding certificate. But if I am a, say, for example, I am a branch, I was set up in India last year. I did not have much operations in India last year. But 2021 onwards, I'm expecting to do a lot of business. And therefore, financial year 2020 was the first year when I wanted to apply for a lower withholding certificate. In this case, I do not have a previous withholding certificate. And therefore, every payment that I receive, the person would be charging a 40% withholding tax because there is no TDS certificate which guides them what is the tax rate that needs to be applied, what is the TDS rate that needs to be applied while making those payments. In order to counter such scenarios, what the government has proposed is that the TDS rate that will be applicable here in such cases will be 10% if the company does not have a earlier TDS certificate. No tax implication on withdrawal from EPF. So EPF, if any withdrawal is made, typically if it is made within 5 years, before 5 years of continuation of service, there is a tax implication on such withdrawal. However, given the financial stress, government has relaxed the provision and has allowed withdrawal from EPF subject to certain conditions. So a EPF member can now withdraw up to 3 months basic and CA or 75% of balance in the amount. So a EPF member can withdraw 75% of the balance or 3 months basic and DA, whichever is lower. Once the withdrawal is made, the EPF member would not be liable to replenish his account. So these withdrawals are non-refundable. These withdrawals can be done online provided the member has an activated UAN and the Aadhaar is verified and linked with the UAN and the bank account with IFSC code is seeded with UAN. So if you have all these things in place, the withdrawal can be done online as well. Extension of time for submitting forms 15G and 15H. So similar to lower withholding or a nil TDS certificate, Form 15G and 15H are typically given by taxpayers to banks and financial institutions. These are submitted with the banks in the first week of April to avoid a higher withholding. So extension has been extended to these forms as well, and therefore the forms which were required to be submitted by first week of April can now be submitted by 30th of June 2020. Lastly, immediate issuance of income tax refunds up to INR 5 lakhs. So this was an announcement which was made by Income Tax Department that individuals, companies which have a refund pending up to 5 lakhs, they would be releasing such refunds ASAP. Recently, there was a news that by CBDT that refunds worth 5,300 crores have already been issued by the department. Business ramifications of COVID-19. So despite the relaxations that have been given by the government, there are a lot of consequences of COVID-19, a lot of tax impacts that one needs to evaluate because of COVID-19. The first and foremost being tax residency for individuals. So, due to this travel ban, which has been imposed worldwide, situations have come up wherein employees they are working from a country which is typically not their place of work. For example, if so for example under the income tax law, if a person of Indian origin or a citizen of India, if he is coming to India on a visit, the person is not considered a resident if the stay is less than 182 days. So the person qualifies as a non-resident as long as the stay is 182 days. This 182 days definition, as you would know, has been amended by Finance Act 2020, wherein a twin condition has been imposed regarding non-residents. So just to explain you that in a little more detail. So now Finance Act 2020 says that where a person of Indian origin or a citizen of India is coming to India for a period which is exceeding 120 days and has total income or exceeding 15 lakhs, the person will be treated as a resident of India. So before I explain that with the help of example, I will just tell you what total income means. Total income means any income which is earned in India excluding your foreign income. So let us just understand this by way of an example. So if I am a if there is a individual who is a citizen of India, he has a business or a profession in India. So he's an accountant, he has a profession in India. But he is also rendering services outside India, say for example in Dubai. The way at present, the way he has been managing his stay in India is that he is present in India for less than 182 days, and therefore whatever tax he needs to pay is just on his income which is earned in India. He is not required to pay any taxes on his Dubai income because he qualifies as a non-resident. But under the new amendment which has been brought in, where this person stays in India for 122 days or more and his Indian income exceeds 15 lakh, he will be treated as a resident and will also be liable to pay tax on his income which is earned in Dubai. Putting this example in the context of COVID, where this person could not manage his stay and ends up staying in India for more than 120 days, he would become a resident of India and therefore he would be entitled to pay tax on all his income, whether earned in Dubai or in India. So these are certain implications that have arisen because of COVID-19, since the individuals cannot plan their stay in countries. Once the person becomes a resident in India, following aspects would need to be evaluated in terms of what is the personal income tax that needs to be paid, what is the income on which the tax needs to be paid, whether the person would be required to make contributions, social security contributions, what are the filings that one needs to undertake, implications in the home country. So this particularly talks of a situation where a non-resident who has never been a resident in India becomes a resident in India because of this lockdown. Whether and because of becoming a and because he has become a resident in India is now required to pay tax in India. So whether the tax which has been paid in India, will a credit of this tax will be available in the home country, that is another aspect that needs to be evaluated. Once the individual becomes resident, what is the earning which will be taxable? Will it be just the India source earning or entire worldwide income? So these are certain aspects which needs to be considered once a person becomes tax resident in India because of the travel restrictions imposed worldwide. OECD, which is your Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, has issued a guidance here saying that situations like this should be treated as exceptional and temporary and should not trigger a change in residency status. So, what OECD is trying to say is that these exceptional cases which has come up because of the travel bans imposed worldwide, they should be treated as an exceptional situation and should not trigger a residency status for non-residents. But it is yet to be seen how Indian tax authorities will adopt these while issuing guidance to the taxpayers. As of now, there is no guidance which has been issued by the income tax authorities in this regard. Tax residency for corporates. Another issue that arises due to travel restrictions is the tax residency for corporates. So there is a concept of permanent establishment wherein a foreign company becomes, if a foreign company has a place from where it can carry out its business, such place becomes a P of the foreign entity. So so by way of example, if there is an employee who is stuck in India and that employee of foreign entity is carrying out the work of the foreign employee of the foreign employee from India, will the foreign entity constitute a P in India? It is something that needs to be evaluated. Where it is said that yes, the foreign entity creates a P in India, what will be the tax consequences for the PE? What will be the local filing requirements are something that needs to be ascertained. Moving on to the reliefs aspect, one will have to look at the treaties just to see whether some relief is available under the PE clause or not. And the last bullet, credit of tax paid in foreign country, it typically talks that where a P is created in a foreign country, so a P of a foreign entity is created in India and the Indian authorities impose tax on it, and whether the foreign entity would be allowed to take credit of the taxes paid in India. Another interesting example could be in case of an installation fee. So typically where a foreign entity carries out an installation work in India for a period exceeding 180 days, the foreign entity creates an installation PE in India and is therefore required to pay taxes in India. Because of this travel restrictions, a situation can arise where a project which was say intended for 3 months or 4 months has now got extended and ends up in a span of 6 months or maybe 8 months. In that case, whether the foreign entity will create an installation T in India is a question worth examining. In the past, there have been judgments where temporary interruptions have been discussed, and the view that comes out of those judgments is that typically Indian tax officers, they tend to include these temporary interruptions while calculating the number of days. So one can say that they would create a P in India. The third aspect that one needs to look from a foreign company perspective is POEM, place of effective management. So just to explain you what POEM means, uh, POEM means basically that a foreign entity will be considered as resident in India if it is being controlled from India. So, to give you an example, if there is an individual who is a citizen of India and he is a director in a foreign company, for all the for all the Dubai related meetings, he used to travel to Dubai to attend those meetings. But now, because of travel restrictions, such individual cannot attend those meetings in person and has to attend them via video conferencing from India. In that particular case, can one say that the POEM of the Dubai entity is in India? So that is something that will have to be evaluated. On all these aspects that I have just now discussed with regard to tax residency for corporates as well as individuals, OECD has already issued a guidance note, and we are expecting income tax department to issue a guidance note explaining scenarios, explaining cases where or where not one will be said to be resident in India. So it should be released shortly. Moving on to transfer pricing considerations. So because of this global pandemic, there will be a lot of transfer pricing issues as well. The first and foremost being because the businesses are shut down, the profit margins may drastically go down. So the question that needs to be addressed here is that once the profits goes down or the company incurs losses, the immediate argument of tax authority would be that this loss or this low profit is not because of COVID-19, but it is because of the company is not charging an arm's length price. So, in order to tackle such situations, companies need to keep a documentation which is critical and which will actually evidence the commercial rationale for recording a lower profit or for recording the losses. So, it is very critical to have a documentation in place wherein if the company has incurred significant losses because of this COVID-19 closure or is earning lower profits compared to the previous years, they should actually write down the reasons for the same, so that at the time of audit, it becomes easier for them to prove to the authorities that it was not because of charging of non-arm's length price, but it was because of the economy as such or the environment as such that the company has incurred such losses or low profits. Second consideration that can come up is that a lot of Indian companies are BPOs or KPOs. They have a fixed cost plus margin that they earn from their foreign companies. Because of the pressure that the economy is facing, a part of it can be passed on to the Indian companies wherein the margins can be reduced. So this can be challenged by the tax authorities. So to give you an example, if there is a BPO which has been typically earning a margin of 18%, now because of COVID, it is decided that instead of 18%, a margin of 16% would be given to the Indian company. The authorities can challenge this 16%. Some of the grounds where the authorities could challenge is that in case of a BPO function, it is a routine function and it should so no part of the risk should be transferred to the Indian entity, and the risk part should only be kept with the foreign entity, and therefore this charging of 16% and not 18% may not be accepted by the tax authorities. The third aspect that needs consideration is that in order to reduce the pressure on cash flows, it may be agreed between the group companies to suspend royalty payments or FTS. So here the challenge that will come up is that as long as from a India perspective, as long as the payments were going, they were being paid outside India, the authorities may be fine with it. But the moment we talk of a reverse situation wherein the royalty payments or FTS were being received in India, if there is a temporary suspension of these payments, it will be challenged by the authorities. Another aspect that comes up is that whether these related parties should also renegotiate their arrangement, given that all the third parties are doing it in the current environment. So, whether charging of margins, charging of various payments should also be renegotiated or not. An interesting aspect that will that can come up in this situation is with respect to APAs. So APAs or advanced pricing arrangement, typically what happens is that in case of APAs, the taxpayer typically agrees on transfer prices or margins for a period of 5 years, for a future period of 5 years, and also for it can go back up to 4 years. So for a total period of 9 years, a transfer pricing margin can be agreed with the authorities. In the present context, what happens where the APA terms are breached? What happens where APA talks of a 18% margin, and because of COVID, because of the business closure, what is achieved is say 16% or 12%. What will happen in such situations is something that one needs to consider and understand. Also, APA negotiation. Uh, so, like we discussed, the last point that we discussed was where the APAs have been closed and a certain price has been agreed. Now, another impact could be on the negotiations where entities are entering into new APAs. What will happen in that scenario? So, for example, a company, a KPO, is entering into a APA negotiation wherein typically the margin is 18%. But during negotiations, the government says that because of this effect of COVID-19, we expect you to earn not 18 but 20%. So what will happen to these APA negotiations is another aspect that needs consideration. Improving cash flows. So given the businesses have closed down, it is very important to evaluate cash flows. It is very important to evaluate the current situation, the amount of cash that businesses have in hand, and how they can make those pay, and how it can be used for making payment of taxes. Another aspect that would need evaluation here is whether there is a need for obtaining a lower or a nil withholding certificate. So, say for example, for example, a company is expecting to incur losses because of COVID-19. If you do not go for a lower withholding certificate, whatever payments you may receive may be subject to a TDS withholding, and eventually, at the time of filing return, you would be claiming a refund. Instead of claiming a refund, the company can be proactive, work out the projections, and obtain a nil or a lower withholding order, and therefore can save on blocking that extra cash which would have gone to the department in terms of in the way of tax. Ensure all exemptions and reliefs are available by the business. So one needs to make sure that all the exemptions which have been provided in the act and which have also been provided in view of COVID-19 are being availed by the business. Lastly, evaluate the quantum of tax refunds which are stuck with the government and assess options to facilitate early release. So, if you have refunds which are stuck with the department and have not been pursued till date, this is the time that one should evaluate what is the amount that is stuck and should get in touch with the authorities for an early release. So, taxable income. So, now we will be discussing some of the expenses and incomes which are typically a part of PNL and which are likely to be seen in the balance sheets for 1920 and 2021 because of COVID-19 disruptions. Why this becomes critical is also because a lot of companies might report losses during this period, and therefore the tax authorities would want to evaluate each and every item of the PNL to ensure that the losses are reduced or the losses either turned into income. So these items become important. The first item that we will be discussing is a liability outstanding for a very long period of time and not written back in account. So if you have a debtor which has been outstanding in the books for quite some time, the tax officer would want to write it off and would not want you to would not want you to claim this as an expense, but would want that this should be treated as an income under 41(1). So the rationale that will be taken by the officer is that the person does not want to make a payment, and therefore this should be the rationale that the department will be taking is that this particular amount is simply outstanding as an expense in the books, and there is no what you call is a willingness on the part of the person to pay this amount. So therefore this is a benefit that the person has and therefore should be treated as an income under 41(1). So there, if that is the argument which is made by the department, there are contradictory judgments on this, some in favor and some against the assessee. So in one of the cases which was in favor of the assessee, the tribunal held that as long as there is an entry in the books of accounts, and there is an intention of the assessee to pay, the officer cannot write this back and cannot treat this as an income. Whereas in other cases, there have been instances where it has been considered as a income taxable under 41(1). So such kind of situation can arise at the time of audit. Waiver of working capital loan. Because of this stress, there could be a situation wherein financial institutions and banks could come up with a one-time settlement scheme asking the customers to pay a certain amount and giving exemption or waiving of a portion of the loan. Say, for example, you have taken 1 lakh rupees of loan from a bank, and in order to avoid any defaults, the bank says that okay, this is a one-time settlement scheme that I'm offering, wherein instead of 1 lakh, you can pay 70,000. So there is a waiver of 30,000. In this particular case, will that 30,000 be treated as your income? The answer here is yes, because it is a working capital loan, and because such waiver, it is nothing but a remission or a cessation of a trading liability. This waiver of 30,000 will be treated as a income taxable under 41(1). So despite there being a relief of from payment, there is a tax liability which will be imposed on the company. The third example is waiver of loan borrowed for purchasing a fixed asset. So the first that we discussed was a working capital loan. What if a company has taken a loan for purchasing a fixed asset? What would happen? Whether the waiver would be taxable under the income tax or not? So the answer here is no. The waiver of loan which is obtained for purchasing a fixed asset would not be taxable under the Income Tax Act, for the sole reason that this particular loan was borrowed for not for a trading liability but for a capital asset, and therefore it is not a income which is taxable under 41 or 28. Another aspect which is also associated with this waiver of loan borrowed for purchase of fixed asset is whether that waiver of loan will be subtracted from the fixed asset cost. So whether that 30 rupees waiver which I had got in relation to a loan for purchasing a fixed asset, whether that 30 rupees will be reduced from my block of fixed assets or not. So the answer here is that 30 rupees would not be reduced from your fixed asset block. Reason being that this 30 rupees is not in the nature of a subsidy or in the nature of a grant. Had it been a case where this loan was taken from a branch, from a parent entity and not from a bank or a financial institution, the answer would be different. So in that particular case, this waiver, the waiver of 30% by a parent company can be considered as a subsidy. Tax impact on deduction of expenses. So all the expenses that are presently being incurred by the corporates, such as rent, salary, or depreciation, to keep the business alive, will those expenses be allowed as a deduction or not? So the answer is yes, those expenses will be allowed as a deduction. Just because there has been a temporary close down in the business will not take away the right of the taxpayer to claim those expenses as a deduction. Tax deduction on account of write-off of loan given to subsidiary or a group company. So this is an interesting topic. Say, for example, so there is a subsidiary company which is manufacturing parts and are ultimately sold to the group company. The subsidiary company is in a bad financial condition, and therefore the holding company gives a loan to the subsidiary company. Due to this COVID-19 situation, the holding company decides to write off the loan because the subsidiary company has incurred losses and is not in a position to pay. So what will be the impact? Whether this write-off of loan given by the group company to the subsidiary, will that be allowed as a tax deduction? The answer is twofold. So if the group company and subsidiary company, they are into the same line of business, or if the business of subsidiary company is incidental to the business of the group company. So in our particular example, where the subsidiary is supplying parts to the group to the parent company, which is being used by the parent company, had the parent company not given a right, had the parent company not given what you call is a write off, or had it not given a write off of loan, the subsidiary company might have shut down, which would have impacted the business of the parent company. In this particular case, such write-offs can be allowed as a deduction, because this write-off by the parent company to the subsidiary company is incidental to the business of the parent company, and is in the normal course of business. Now, taking another example, where the parent company has given a loan to the subsidiary company merely because it has made investment in the subsidiary company. There are no business transactions between the companies, and they are not even into the same businesses. In that particular case, any waiver which is done by the parent company will not be allowed as a tax deduction to the parent company. Provision for bad debts versus bad debts written off. So, irrespective of COVID or non-COVID, the principles of taxation would remain the same. And like provision for bad debts, which are typically made by companies, even in a normal scenario, based on a certain percentage of sales, are not tax deductible. Even in the COVID pandemic, they would remain to be non-tax deductible. Whereas a claim for bad debt, that is will be allowed as a tax deductible expenditure in the books of the assessee. Inventory write-offs. Same logic applies to inventory write-offs, where there is a provision for inventory write-off. The same will not be a tax deductible expenditure. However, actual inventory write-offs will be allowed as a tax deductible expenditure. Valuation issues. Another important area wherein COVID-19 has a significant impact is in case of valuation. So, in a span of weeks, COVID-19 has impacted the valuation of entities significantly. The valuation of entities pre-COVID and post-COVID have drastically variated. So, there is a significant variation in the valuation because of the uncertainty of COVID-19. It is difficult to evaluate. It is difficult to evaluate the. It is difficult to come to a certain value. A business, what the business is valued during COVID-19, it has become difficult to value business. So a lot of gaps have arisen. So if we talk of an example here, so I will explain this with the help of example. Say there is a deal that is currently ongoing, wherein certain terms were agreed. And one of the terms was that the consideration that will be paid will be based on the performance of the entity. So the consideration payable was based on the performance of the entity being purchased. Now, due to COVID-19, what would have happened is that they would have, the company or the seller would have thought of a particular performance that, or a valuation that would come up because of the performance of the companies. However, due to COVID-19 uncertainties, there is now a gap between what was projected and what is the current situation. And as a result, there is a deadlock between the buyer and the seller on the purchase consideration. So, how are people going to deal with such considerations? One way of dealing with such considerations could be that the buyer and the seller could agree to a certain fixed consideration, and could defer a part of the consideration based on future, what you call is a future performance. So in order, so these kind of situations have come up in ongoing deals where there are a lot of to and fro negotiations happening, where the deals were almost on the on the verge of closing, but because of COVID-19, a lot of uncertainties have come up, and the buyers and sellers are renegotiating on considerations, on conditions, etc. Another interesting instance that can come up is at the time of audit on all the fundings that would have happened during this COVID period. So, to give you an example, if there were there is a company which has issued shares to its parent just before COVID period, say in the early month of March, the tax authorities at the time of audit can challenge such valuations. Say, so for example, if the value of the company, of the share of the company was 1,000 in the first week of March, because of COVID, there can be a situation where it could have gone down to say 800 or 800 in the third week of March. So in this particular case, where funds were raised by issuance of shares at 1,000 rupees, the authorities can question this 1,000 in light of this 800 valuation, saying that this 1,000 valuation is incorrect and may trigger 56 to 7B implications, saying that there has been a benefit that has been passed on to the company, and that excess of income, which is 1,000 minus 800, which is 200, should be treated as an income in the hands of the company. Now, reversing this example, where say the company was in the discussions for raising funds and has raised, and it, because it was in need of fund, it has raised fund say in the last week of March. So the valuation which was 1,000 before which was pre-COVID is now 800. In this particular case, the tax authorities may want to trigger 56 to 10 implications, saying that the price at which the shares have been issued has been at a lower valuation, that is 800 instead of 1,000, and may try and add this 200 to the income of the purchaser. So there can be a lot of gift taxation issues around funding that happens during this short span of time. Uh, Funding considerations. So given the COVID pandemic, there are situations wherein the companies are on short of cash. So in a group, there may be situations wherein the parent is considering moving funds from one company to another. So there are a lot of aspects that needs to be considered while moving this cash between companies. One of them is the mode, how the fund should be made available between companies, whether it should be made available through loans, infusion of capital, dividend, buyback. What is the transaction cost? So once you are moving cash, say by way of loans, what is the transaction cost of that loan? Whether what is the tax implication one needs to examine, and lastly, how will the funding be repaid once the party becomes positive and things are settled down? So, two instances that we have discussed here is movement of cash from parent company to subsidiary. So, say for example, there is a cash which is there available with the parent company, and the parent company wants to move this cash to the subsidiary company. So, what are the possible modes of infusion? There are the possible modes of infusion are infusion of by way of share capital, by way of loan, or by way of issuance of instruments at CCD. So where a parent company infuses money by way of share capital, although there is one needs to bear in mind that there will be no tax deductible expenditure which will be available to the subsidiary company. Also, the dividend which will be paid by the subsidiary company, given the new amendment in the act, would become taxable in the hand of the parent company. And where infusion is by way of share capital, the repayment becomes difficult. So these are aspects one needs to look at while infusing capital by way of share capital. Second, loan. So where the parent company is considering infusing money by way of loan, typically what needs to be looked at is a the interest limitation restrictions. So under the income tax law, there where loan is given by a foreign parent to a subsidiary, the interest expense that can be claimed by a subsidiary is subjected to a lot of restrictions. So that will come into picture. Also, foreign exchange regulations will come into picture. But the brighter side of it is that where loan is provided, a subsidiary company is entitled to a tax deductible expenditure, and also loan can be easily repaid after the closure of the tenure. Similarly, companies can also look at different instruments like CCDs and CCPS, which are typically considered for moving around cash. Another example is where there is a lot of cash available with the subsidiary company and the subsidiary company wants to move it to the parent company. So the possible mode is buyback. So for example, there is a Indian subsidiary company and there is a Indian parent company. If the subsidiary company moves the cash to the parent company by way of buyback, what is typically the tax cost is the buyback tax, which is 20% plus surcharge and cess, as against a case where this cash was moved by way of dividend. Because in case of buyback, what is paid as a tax cost is 20% as against dividend, where maybe the dividend is taxable in the hands of the company parent company at 30%. So here the tax cost in by the tax cost of moving cash by way of buyback is less as compared to dividend. So one would need to evaluate the situation and the facts of the case to understand how this cash needs to be moved between companies. Another example, say there is a foreign parent company and there is a Indian subsidiary. How so in this particular case, a better way of moving cash would be by way of dividend if the parent company is from a tax friendly jurisdiction, because there are certain countries wherein tax dividend is exempt from tax and the withholding rate on such dividends is just 5%. So here a better way of moving cash from the parent to subsidiary would be dividend rather than buyback, which is 20% as against 5%. Cash extraction through group structuring. So another way of moving cash is by way of group restructuring. So assuming there is an Indian company and the Indian company has 200% subsidiaries in India. So uh, it has two Indian subsidiaries in India, and the subsidiary A has surplus cash which needs to be moved to the Indian company. So in this particular case, where there is ICO and there are two wholly owned subsidiaries, one of which is cash rich, a possible way of moving cash from one subsidiary to ICO would be by selling the shares of the other subsidiary to the cash rich subsidiary. In this particular case, where uh, the shares are sold to the cash rich subsidiary, there would be no capital gains tax. So, Section 47 of the Income Tax Act exempts such transfer of capital asset from the ambit of capital gains. So, in this particular scenario, cash can move without any payment of taxes. So one needs to see the facts of the case and hello, yeah. So before deciding on the possible modes of moving money through companies, one needs to understand the facts of the case, the transaction cost, which is associated with these movements, and also how the cash will be repatriated or refunded once the situation is normalized. So these things needs to be considered before one decides on how to move cash through the companies. So that's about it. Hello.
Thank you, Priyanka, for the session. And now we can take up the question answer sessions wherein the participants might have few questions. Let me reiterate those questions for you, and
Yeah.
Priyanka will answer those questions. And for making this everyone to have this PDF which we have uploaded on our website, I have shared the link in this chat. I'm again sending this link. You can download this link during the conversation before the end of this whole seminar, and we are just taking the questions by the participants. Let me have the first question. Considering the extension in the due date for investment till 30th June, what shall be the due date for filing of 24Q TDS return by the employer? Any news on that?
Sorry, considering the extension in
So the due date for making the investments for ATC has been extended till
Yeah.
30th June. So what is the due date for filing the 24Q TDS return for the salary case?
So for the T, so for the
This has
P,
not yet notified as of now.
yeah, it has simply been said that whatever returns are the due date of returns which are falling between 20th of March to 20th of 9th of June can now be filed up till 30th of June. So I think when it says returns, it also includes your TDS return.
बट पॉइंट यही आ रहा है कि थोड़ा सा कंफ्यूजन यही हो रहा है सबको कि जस्ट मैं क्वेरी क्लैरिफाई कर देता हूँ सबकी। देखिए लॉ में जो डेट एक्सटेंड की है वो ये बोली गई है कि 20th मार्च जिस दिन से लॉकडाउन अनाउंस हुआ और जब तक ये लॉकडाउन एंड होगा उसका आप रिटर्न 31st तक आप उसका रिटर्न आप 30th जून तक फाइल कर सकते हैं। बट द प्रॉब्लम ये आएगा कि भाई जब एटीसी का ड्यू डेट 30 जून कर दिया या 29 जून कर दिया तो प्रैक्टिकली आप टीडीएस रिटर्न 30 जून तक नहीं फाइल कर सकते। इसमें लॉ की क्लैरिटी भी आएगी एज ऑफ नाउ 30 जून, बट लेट्स लॉ कम अप विद द क्लैरिटी।
हाँ, so there is no per se no specific circular or notification which has been issued by the government in this regard, but it is definitely expected that it should be extended.
Right. The next question is, I think as per CBDT order, 10% rate is including surcharge and cess. Yes, in case of non-resident, the TDS rate is I think 10% without considering the with considering the surcharge.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is whether the due date for Form 61 is also extended.
Form 16. So see, again, it has not.
I think it is for lower deduction. Form 61A.
Form 61A. See.
This is for the lower deduction. For non-deducting the TDS to the banks. I think it is. This is also got extended.
So I will have to check that.
Not an issue. Not an issue. Okay, my employer has submitted the proof and have delayed investment as timelines has been extended, but TDS deposited under Section 192 has not been extended. Would we are liable to pay interest if employee do not make the investment and we have short deducted the tax? So the question is कि कंपनी ने अपना TDS डिपॉजिट कर दिया बट एम्प्लॉई ने अभी तक ATC का इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं किया, ठीक है। अब आपने अपने एम्प्लॉय से डिक्लेरेशन ले लिया कि ठीक है ही विल डू द इन्वेस्टमेंट बाय 30th जून क्योंकि अभी सबको कैश फ्लो चैलेंजेस हैं। ओके, ना क्वेश्चन ही आता है कि एज एन एम्प्लॉयर मेरे को जो टीडीएस का ड्यू डेट नहीं बढ़ाया ना उसके लिए तो लॉ ने बोला इंटरेस्ट लगेगा, तो कंपनी ना गुड फेथ इज डिपॉजिटिंग द टैक्स। ओके, तो क्वेश्चन इज कि अगर कल वो डिफॉल्ट निकल के आता है कि भाई एम्प्लॉय ने नहीं करी 80C, वो बोलता है सर मेरे पास पैसे नहीं थे और मैं नहीं कर पाया, तो उस सिनेरियो में कंपनी को एडिशनल टीडीएस जमा कराना पड़ेगा ना,
हाँ
तो उस पे इंटरेस्ट लगेगा, उसमें कोई रिलैक्सेशन नहीं है।
नहीं है।
क्योंकि आप एक डिक्लेरेशन पे बिलीव कर रहे हो कि वो डिक्लेरेशन जो दे रहा है वही गोइंग ऑनवर्ड्स करेक्ट होने वाली है, बट अगर
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, so the declaration should be correct.
नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन देख लेते हैं। क्वेश्चन आया है कि जो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट है क्या वो 9% रहेगा या 18% रहेगा, जो भी हमारे रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट 50% कर दिया आई थिंक लॉ ने, तो एक बार उस पे सबका क्वेश्चन आ रहा है प्रियंका जी।
सॉरी, हेलो, आपकी आवाज
क्वेश्चन ये आ
नहीं
रहा है कि अगर हम
क्लियर।
कोई भी टैक्स डिले कर रहे हैं तो उस पे रेट
हाँ।
ऑफ इंटरेस्ट एज अ रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट क्या है, मतलब अगर इफ देयर इज अ डिले इन
तो बेसिकली जैसे आपका अगर आप टीडीएस का डिपॉजिट लेट करते हो तो 1.5% पर मंथ का इंटरेस्ट लगता है। तो इंस्टेड ऑफ 1.5%, नाउ द इंटरेस्ट पर मंथ विल बी 0.75%. So that is what it has been reduced to 0.75%. Similarly, जहाँ पे 1% था वहाँ पे 0.75% कर दिया है।
अखिल जी इट इज ओके ओके ओके। तो अखिल जी का एक क्वेश्चन फिर से आ रहा है कि जब अगर हम किसी भी नॉन रेजिडेंट को पेमेंट करेंगे तो टीडीएस का रेट क्या है, 10% आया है प्लस सरचार्ज प्लस सेस, और 10% इज इंक्लूसिव ऑफ सरचार्ज एंड सेस।
So yeah, no. So this is a TDS rate of 10% plus surcharge plus cess.
So this is exclusive अखिल जी, not
हाँ, this is
inclusive।
exclusive.
अगला सवाल आ रहा है कि how the interest for the self assessment tax paid for 1920 return will not be filed till 30th September for the company। आई थिंक कंपनी ये पूछना चाह रही है कि अगर मैं सेल्फ असेसमेंट टैक्स की 30 सितंबर तक नहीं पे करती हूँ या ड्यू डेट उसकी एक्सटेंड होती है तो रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट को कैसे कैलकुलेट किया जाएगा।
कि वो कब तक आपको करना है, मतलब आपको कितने मंथ्स तक का देना है।
एब्सोल्युटली।
सो द थिंग इज कि आपको 31st ऑफ मार्च तक देना होता है, जिसका आपको एक्सटेंशन मिल गया है। तो अभी अगर बियॉन्ड 30th ऑफ जून जो भी सिचुएशन होगी उस पे व्हाट वी आर एक्सपेक्टिंग इज दैट देयर विल बी अ फ्रेश क्लैरिफिकेशन फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट। तो व्हेन यू टॉक ऑफ अ सेल्फ असेसमेंट इन केस ऑफ अ कंपनी जिसकी ड्यू डेट सितंबर की है, such cases have not been covered as of now. What they are primarily
की
covering,
क्लैरिफिकेशन जो है वो हम समझ पा रहे प्रियंका जी से, दैट क्लैरिफिकेशन इज अप टिल 30 जून। अगर कोई भी क्लैरिफिकेशन 30 जून की बाद की होगी उस पे लॉ स्पेसिफिकली इन्फॉर्म करेगा।
right?
आप अनम्यूट करके अपना सवाल पूछ सकते हैं, ऐसा नहीं कि लिखना ही है, अगर कईयों को लगता है अनम्यूट करके दे कैन अनम्यूट देयर स्क्रीन एंड दे कैन पुट अप देयर क्वेश्चंस, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है। आशीष जी, can you please unmute everyone so that they can put up their question? It will be
इंटेलिजेंट है वो या मैच्योर, ये क्वेश्चन मैच्योरिटी काटता हूँ मेरे हाथ में भी लगेगी ना, तो इस केस
आशीष म्यूट कर दो सबको, म्यूट। Before 30th June, the interest will be 9%.
Before 30th of June.
हम 30th जून से पहले अगर अपने टैक्सेस पे कर देते हैं तो क्या रेट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट 9% ही रहेगा? यस,
Yes.
इसमें कोई चेंज नहीं है। एक क्वेश्चन बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग आया था, मैं एक हाँ कि दो रिटर्न विल नॉट बी फाइल। यस पूजा जी, क्योंकि लॉ ने ये बोला है कि आप रिटर्न करने से पहले अगर आप 31 मार्च से पहले अपना 100% एडवांस टैक्स पे कर देते हो तो आपके ऊपर 234 BC का इंटरेस्ट नहीं लगता।
नहीं लगता है।
राइट। हाँ एसएटी आप एडॉक बेसिस पे कर लो, हाँ बट कल ये होगा कि अगर आपका डिफरेंस ऑफ टैक्स निकला तो उस केस में आपको टैक्स देना पड़ेगा। एक मैं इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन बता देता हूँ, ये बहुत सारे एम्प्लॉयज के लिए भी है, एक हर इंडिविजुअल के लिए है कि वो ये सोच रहे हैं कि चलो हम ना आज तक तो हमने पॉलिसी ली ही नहीं कभी, बहुत लोग होते हैं जिन्होंने पॉलिसी नहीं ले रखी है एटीसी की, वो ये सोच रहे हैं कि हम 1 अप्रैल से नई पॉलिसी ले लेते हैं, ठीक है। लॉ ने तो क्या किया, लॉ ने तो बोला कि जिसने भी इन्वेस्टमेंट 30 जून तक कर ली उसका बेनिफिट हम आपको 31 मार्च 2020 में करेंगे। तब आओ किसी एसएससी को लगा कि नहीं नहीं मैंने तो 1 अप्रैल को नई पॉलिसी ली है जिसका प्रीमियम 50,000 या 1 लाख, मैं उसका बेनिफिट 31 मार्च 20 की रिटर्न में ले सकता हूँ क्योंकि लॉ ने वो 30 जून तक एक्सटेंड कर दिया। तो इसका आंसर बड़ा क्लियर है कि वो इवेंट जो 21 को एग्जिस्ट करता था,
Exactly.
वो इवेंट जो 31 मार्च तक एग्जिस्ट करता था उसके लिए रिलैक्सेशन आई है।
So you should already have a existing policy in place. You can't purchase a new policy to claim the benefit of extension.
और किसी के पास कोई सवाल है तो वी कैन हैप्पी टू टेक द क्वेश्चंस। एक बहुत बड़ा इतना बड़ा क्वेश्चन आया है 195 पे, इतना बड़ा तो अखिल जी आई थिंक
वो समरी बनाना था, अभी एक वेबिनार चल रहा है, करके कॉल 10 मिनट नहीं अटेंड
अखिल जी
बना लेते।
अखिल जी का बहुत बड़ा क्वेश्चन आया है तो मैं इतना कुछ नहीं पढ़ पाऊंगा। Let's suppose I am making a payment of say 15,000. I have deducted the TDS 30% in 195. Let's suppose the payment is made to software subscription charges. Sorry Akhil ji, ये क्वेश्चन इतना बड़ा है कि I can't take the call, but can we have a discussion on this topic separately because it's a very lengthy question, वो पूरा chat में नहीं आ पा रहा है। We can take this question maybe post this call. Priyanka's number is there on the screen.
Or maybe you can simply send it to us and we can also respond on email.
Sure.
So whatever is convenient to you.
I think we have answered all the questions of all the participants. अगर फिर भी आपको लगता है कि कोई क्वेश्चन अनआंसर्ड है तो आप हमें मेल लिख सकते हैं, आप हमें कनेक्ट कर सकते हैं। The connecting you can connect us on the email ID update@cretamadvisory.com. This is our email ID. I'm just sending on the chat box also. Or you can connect to Priyanka also, priyanka@gstexpertise.com as well. एक इम्पॉर्टेंट अपडेट था सबके लिए कि एक इम्पॉर्टेंट अपडेट था कि कल का सेशन हम मीट गूगल पे लेंगे, गूगल मीट पे, और सेशन इज मोर ऑन द इम्पैक्ट ऑफ दिस होल ट्रांजैक्शंस ऑफ कोविड-19 ऑन द फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स। बिकॉज आप लोगों को बहुत सारे वरी होंगे कि ठीक है वी हैव अंडरस्टूड सम मोर फ्रॉम डायरेक्ट टैक्स, वी हैव मोर अंडरस्टूड फ्रॉम द इनडायरेक्ट टैक्स ऑल्सो। नाउ इट इज मोर फ्रॉम द फाइनेंशियल पर्सपेक्टिव कि फाइनेंशियल कैसे दिखेंगे, आपके ऑडिटर्स आपसे क्या सवाल करेंगे, आप उसके लिए क्या रोबोस्ट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन प्रिपेयर करेंगे। This is what we are planning to have, and for reference I am sharing the invite here itself. You can just copy paste that invite and we will be sending a separate mail for the invitation. So that is for the event. You can just copy this link and save it in your any of your devices, and we can also send the email. Because through this link you can connect with the Google Meet as well. You can use Google Chrome, you can use Hangout of your phone. So just for making the seminar more easier, because lots of participants were facing the challenges from this software. That is the reason. I think in last we have covered all subjects. In case you still need any clarification, please write to us on our email ID. We are happy to serve you. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone.
Thank you everyone.